You make our wedding look pooah just by being here.
I, a high school dropout, was invited to the wedding of a friend who had achieved success and made it big. It was my first time at such a fancy, formal wedding, and I was a bit nervous. The bride hurled insults at me.
Low education should cut ties with my husband, shouldn't you?
Really? Is that okay? You're the one who said to cut ties. Whatever happens, it's not my fault. She, judging people superficially by education and titles, had no idea who this dropout really was. I'm Samuel Miller. I am a pianist, not really worth mentioning. I love interacting with various people, traveling the world. In between, I visit jazz bars and restaurants to play my beloved piano. Sometimes, I even play street pianos, earning small money here and there. That's how I live. I'm reluctant to say this, but I grew up in a relatively affluent family. The piano, now my livelihood, was something I was forced to learn from the age of 3. In competitions with adults, I frequently won awards, labeled a prodigy. Looking back, it's quite embarrassing. But that life crumbled when I was in elementary school. My father's business failed, and we ended up in a small apartment in a countryside. Living in a multi-family dwelling, playing the piano at home was not allowed, both emotionally and by rule. Yet, unable to give it up, I'd frequently visit the school's music room after class to practice. One day, after finishing a piece, I unexpectedly heard applause. Looking towards the sound, there was a boy. Seemingly moved, he looked at me, almost in tears.
Wow, that was Waltz of the Poppy, right? By Chopin.
Yay, that's right.
That's awesome. What else can you play?
Well, something like this. I played Schumann's Traumerei, and his eyes lit up even more.
That's really awesome. How long have you been playing?
Since I was 3. I was forced at first, but then I started to enjoy it.
Do you play at home?
No, I live in an apartment, so I can't. That's why I practice here every day. Upon hearing that, he murmured in interest. It seemed like he was impressed by my passion for the piano.
I'm John Wilson. Can I come listen again tomorrow?
I'm Samuel Miller. Sure, I play almost every day, so come by if you're free. John and I shook hands firmly. From that day, my solo performances had an audience. Eventually, John and I got along. His father was a bureaucrat in the Treasury Department, so he was from a wealthy family. Do you play any instruments, John?
Just a bit of violin.
That's awesome. Violin seems tough, right?
Yes, it's difficult. That's why I'm not great at it. My mom always gets mad at me for not being able to play well.
John looked down sadly for a moment.
But
However, his expression changed instantly. He now wore a bright face, almost unrecognizable as the same person.
I was moved by Samuel's piano.
He leaned in close with a fierce intensity. I'm really happy he was moved by my piano, but I didn't expect this much. Hey John,
Yeah,
next time, let's play together, my piano and your violin. When I suggested a session, his face darkened slightly.
my. My violin isn't at a level to match Samuel's piano yet.
Got it. Then let's practice together for the next 2 years of middle school.
Yo!
John hesitated with his words. At that time, I didn't think much of it, but just a few days later, I learned the meaning behind them from him directly. What? Are you going to go to prep school?
Yo, that's right. So, it looks like we won't be able to practice together. Sorry.
That's okay. You have your own dreams, John, right?
Dreams, huh? Actually, my dream just recently. You never mind.
John started to say something, but then stopped himself. Respecting his feelings, I didn't ask any further. Instead, I held out my pinky finger. Promise, no matter how late, we'll definitely play music together.
Yo.
John extended his pinky too. We linked them, solemnly swearing to our future session. Right, I'll send John a letter. I didn't know about John, but as a poor kid, I didn't have a cell phone or the luxury to use the home phone. So, I decided to write him letters, a relatively inexpensive way to keep in touch.
Yay, I'll be waiting.
As friends on different paths, I went to the local public middle school. I didn't join any clubs, instead spending every afternoon in the music room playing piano. I was desperate not to be left behind by John, who would surely return improved. My aspiration to excel in my playing burned brightly, but contrary to my inner feelings and the outside temperature, an event in the summer of my second year of middle school left me cold. Dad. As my mom and I watched, Dad was getting examined in the hospital bed. He had collapsed at work, and after being notified, I had left school early to rush here. He barely responded when called, extremely weak. It was hard to tell if he even had strength left.
He'll need to stay in the hospital for a while to be observed.
The doctor's words only served to increase my anxiety. To distract myself, I threw myself even more into piano. Desperately, I kept pounding the keys, mastering Mussorgsky's Night on Bald Mountain. The unease in my heart and the haunting atmosphere of the piece strangely attracted me. That day, I was so absorbed in my playing that I completely forgot I was in the school's music room. I didn't even notice that a small audience had gathered for my solo performance.
Amazing, Samuel. You're really good at the piano.
There were several girls from my class. Their clapping echoed in the music room. I had been playing as if I was alone, exaggerating my rhythm and movements. Feeling embarrassed, I responded tersely with a thank you. I felt like I was trying too hard, and my embarrassment grew. I worried it showed on my face.
Do you always play here?
Yeah, almost every day. As someone who didn't fit into the social circles at school, these moments of playing after class were my only solace.
Wow, that's amazing. Can we come listen again tomorrow?
Their words reminded me of the first time I met John. Thinking back, it was the piano that brought us together. The black and white keys had a way of bringing people into my life. Of course, I was so happy, I almost cried as I answered. But then, what's this? The poor kid getting a bit too cocky. My nemesis appeared. Emily Brown, she always mocked me for being cool. Her entourage of 3 would join in, making a ruckus almost daily.
Why is someone like you even at this school? Having a fallen poor person around just spoils the atmosphere.
Emily's barbaric laughter filled the room. The girls who had been enjoying my piano were now visibly shrinking back. Who's really spoiling the atmosphere here? I thought, but lacked the courage to say it out loud. Sorry. Having endured enough of their harsh words, I left the music room. Wiping my tears with my sleeve, I ran home as if fleeing the scene. From that day onward, I continued to play the piano every day. Every time, Emily and the others would dampen the mood, but playing the piano was something I couldn't compromise on. No matter how many times they interfered or how harshly they criticized me, I kept playing. But I realized my piano playing had changed noticeably. Ha, ha. I was out of breath from playing so intensely. Sweat covered my body.
You were amazing today, too.
Yay, thanks. The audience praised me, but I couldn't take their words to heart. At some point, the reason I played the piano had shifted from because I love it. It had become a means to release the distortion of a heart compressed by a terrifying presence. It had become an escape from reality. I knew this wasn't right, but it was the only way I knew to clear my mind of these unpleasant feelings.
Here he was again. Can't you read the room?
As my mood fell, Emily's taunts grew worse. These days dragged on, and I eventually stopped going to school altogether. I just wanted to play the piano. To play, I had to go to school. But at school, I faced nothing but insults. Caught in this nightmare triangle, further despair struck me.
Matt.
My dad, now cold and his face turned pale. Mom clung to his right arm, crying, "Dad." Strangely, I didn't shed a tear. Instead, I felt an intense regret. The last time Dad heard me play was when I was a child. Without any concerts, just playing at school, I never had the chance to show him my improvement. I've gotten so much better. I'm on a different level now. Though these words lined up in my mind, I never got to play for him. That regret was unbearable. After Dad passed away, my mom and I moved in with her family. Right after graduating middle school, we headed to Italy. Mom's father, my grandfather, was Italian-American and lived there. My mom, being 1/4 Italian, was named Ellie Rossi.
Hey, welcome back, Samuel.
Thanks, Grandpa. One night, I came home to find Grandpa in the living room. He was watching TV and petting the dog.
Were you at that jazz bar again today?
Yay. Since arriving in Italy, I hadn't attended any educational institutions. I toured local bars, showcasing my piano playing. The tips I received were enough to get by without relying too much on my grandparents. And time passed. Samuel Miller, self-proclaimed pianist, reached his 30s. I've returned from Italy and am now settled in the US. Feeling somewhat homesick, I rented an apartment in the area where I used to live and am living alone there. I longed for my hometown, though I still traveled the world whenever I had the chance. At each place I went, I met various people, shared and updated my values. With each encounter, I felt as if I was evolving, which was incredibly fascinating. Despite my confidence in my plane, seeing the world made me realize I still had much to learn. In Germany, an old man casually played Schubert's Erlkönig on a street piano, leaving me speechless. In a French bar, while playing Ravel's Judo, a teenage girl proposed a duet. For someone who had always played alone, this would be a great experience. I agreed readily, thinking so, but that girl was something else. She not only matched my playing, but led me. Our first duet was a tremendous success. The crowd loved it. Experiences like these kept honing my skills as a pianist. Life was challenging, but I loved the freedom it brought, elevating me to greater heights. This time, I had been to Austria. Returning home, I managed to lug my heavy baggage back to my apartment. Well, there's a pile here, I noted, seeing a heap of letters and various items stuffed in my mailbox. I had told my landlord about my overseas trips, so there was no need for worry. I once forgot to inform them and went abroad, causing a bit of a stir. The accumulation of mail led the neighbors to suspect something was amiss, and they reported it to the police, and upon my return, I was duly scolded by the landlord. Well then, let's see what news we've got this time. After bringing my bags into the room, I started going through the mail. Most of it was utility bills or flyers from the local supermarket. What's this? One envelope stood out, incredibly fancy and lavish. Wedding invitation. Who's getting married? On the back of the envelope, the sender's name was written. John Wilson, Emily. Oh, it's John tying the knot. Seeing the name of an old friend I hadn't seen in a while got me pretty excited. I should write back. Even though we talked about it, we hadn't really written to each other since the summer of our 8th grade. It's been over 10 years, but it seems he hasn't forgotten about me. I took the invitation out of the envelope. It was folded in half, and inside, there was a section to indicate whether I would attend or not. Of course, I'll be attending. I RSVP and send a message to attend the party. I added happily above it. I also wrote down a congratulatory message. 11 p.m. I guess I'll send this back and call tomorrow. When I closed the folded invitation, I noticed a handwritten message from John and his wife. John's handwriting had been strong and elegant since we were kids, and it was still the same. Right below, in a distinctive upward slant, was a message written in the same way. I read both messages, chuckled to myself, and decided to call it a night. Jet lag was hitting me a bit, but I easily overcame the fatigue. On the day of the wedding, when I arrived at the designated location, it turned out to be an extremely famous upscale hotel. This was my first time attending such a posh and formal event, and I was a bit nervous.
Hey there, long time no see, Samuel.
While I was looking for my seat, a voice called out from behind me. Oh, John, congrats on the wedding.
Thanks, glad you could make it.
It had been about 15 years since we last saw each other. We celebrated our reunion with a firm handshake, no need for fancy words. Next to him stood his bride, who looked at me in surprise. Heard you became a bank president.
Yo, thanks to everyone's support.
That's amazing.
Thanks. How about you? Weren't you in the Italy for a while?
Yeah, left right after middle school. Been just taking it easy since then.
I see.
As we were catching up, someone called out to John from a distance. John looked over and gestured with his right hand, "I'll be right back." He trotted off to greet another acquaintance. For some reason, the bride stayed behind, still looking at me.
Samuel Miller, aren't you that Samuel Miller, the guy who used to play the piano in the music room every day?
Yeah, that's me.
Huh? You dropped out of school.
Her distinctive tone, the choice of words seemed to mock me. And then, there was the name Emily on the invitation. I had my suspicions, but the bride, Emily Brown, was that Emily Brown who always picked on me back in middle school. Never thought I'd run into her again after more than 10 years.
You being here just makes our wedding look cheap.
Is that so? Sorry about that.
Yay, you feel bad, huh? Well, since you're here now, it can't be helped, but from now on.
At that moment, Emily's face seemed even more wicked than I remembered.
Low education should cut ties with my husband, shouldn't you?
Even though I had grown up, her words suggesting I cut ties with John really got under my skin. I couldn't stay calm like before and shot back a bit. John and I have been best friends since elementary school, but do you really have the right to sever that bond?
I do, I'm his wife.
Her logic was beyond me. Just then, John came back. Sorry, John, I'm gonna withdraw all my savings from the bank. I'll close that account too.
Wait, why? This is a joke, right?
John was shocked, and Emily just gaped, clearly confused. He must have been too confused to understand what I was saying. Well, your wife just told me that a dropout and a poor guy like me should cut ties with her husband.
What? Emily, what's going on?
I mean.
She was flustered when John questioned her.
A broke loser like him just brings down the whole place. It's bad for your career too, isn't it?
She continued to scream hysterically, not caring who was watching.
Why did you even invite such a poor person to our wedding?
Emily, you're going too far. Apologize to Samuel.
No, I'm not wrong.
I'm sorry, looks like I've ruined your wedding. I turned my back on them and headed for the exit.
Samuel, wait, please, Samuel.
John caught up and grabbed my arm after a few feet. He was desperate to have a word. I wasn't angry at him. I turned back to follow him.
I'm sorry, Samuel.
Don't apologize to me, John. It's me who should be sorry. I got too emotional. Meanwhile, Emily stood there, arms crossed, looking away.
Emily, listen. It's about how Samuel and I met.
When John said that, she just turned her eyes towards him.
It was back when I was in elementary school.
He began a story from 15 years ago as if it happened yesterday.
My parents were strict bureaucrats at the Treasury Department. Not just with studies, but with endless rules on what not to do. It made it hard to fit in at school. I had nothing in common with the other kids.
Contrastingly, he was practically forced to play the violin. Just like my piano, he had been playing since before elementary school.
I hated those days. When I got home, I was constantly under surveillance, forced to study and play, to escape. I'd wander aimlessly around the school after classes.
It was around the time we were in 6th grade. It was also when my dad's business failed and I couldn't play the piano at home anymore. Emily had unwittingly uncrossed her arms and was listening to John's story.
It happened one day. As I passed the music room, I heard Puppy Waltz coming from inside.
John was deeply intrigued by who was playing the piano. Even as a kid, he thought the performance was beyond even the level of music teachers.
When I entered the music room, it was a kid playing. Totally blew my mind. Sure, it's a kid-friendly piece, but it was more than just skillful. It hit me right in the heart. You could tell the pianist was thoroughly enjoying it.
Emily's eyes were a little red.
That was the day I met you, Samuel. Your playing fixed my almost broken heart.
John saw my piano playing as one of the few comforts in his life under the pressure from his parents. That's why he kept coming to the music room every day after that.
Samuel, you played with such joy. It made even playing the violin fun for me. It changed my hated days completely.
That's why he became positive about middle school entrance exams and aced them. Though it was a bit sad to be separated from John when I advanced to a different school, knowing my playing had been such a foundation for him made me proud and happy, too. I had been complimented on my skill before, but never thought I'd saved anyone. Hearing John's story, Emily, tears streaming down her face. She realized that the so-called dropout poor guy she had looked down on was the foundation of her now husband. Whether it was frustration or gratitude, I couldn't tell.
Emily, you said it yourself, right? Back in middle school, when you were having a tough time, the sound of the piano comforted you.
Huh? I was surprised and stared at Emily with wide eyes.
Don't look at me.
She blushed and looked embarrassed.
Maybe that shared experience is why we got along so well.
I've seen many coincidences traveling around the world, but such a miraculous meeting was rare. Who knew I was their matchmaker without realizing it?
Samuel.
John, looking sheepish, questioned me. He doesn't know yet, huh? Actually, John,
What's up?
I was surprised too when I came here, but your wife, she's my middle school classmate.
What? No way.
It was no wonder John was shocked. At this astonishing fact, all three of us could only laugh. After a good laugh, Emily apologized to me. Her hair, probably styled for the wedding, drooped towards the ground.
I'm sorry. I didn't know anything and said terrible things.
It's okay. That was the past.
Emily.
John looked at her with respect, but for me, it was an emergency. Having a bride, the main heroine, apologizing at the wedding reception could start a weird rumor.
It's not just that. I want to apologize for middle school, too. After you stopped coming to school, I regretted it. I even went to your house after graduation to apologize, but you had already moved.
Okay, I get it, but please stop apologizing. Emily turned back towards me, her makeup smeared with tears. She'd probably need to touch up her makeup before returning.
It might sound like an excuse, but my family was really strict. All that stress made me lash out at you.
It turns out her family was quite strict, too. This had caused her stress to build up, and as a result, she had been taking it out on me. Her recent harsh words were influenced by her education-focused parents. In fact, she graduated from a prestigious college and was working at a top company.
Really, I'm so sorry.
Emily apologized to me again. Just forget about the past, okay? Just make John happy. That's all I ask. After receiving their apologies, I felt all the anger drain away, almost forgetting what I was mad about. Then, the wedding planner approached us. It was time. I apologized to Emily this time, urging her to touch up her makeup. And John, about that thing we talked about, leave it to me.
Yay, count on it.
I gave my best friend a thumbs up and took my seat. The wedding went smoothly, and after Emily's touch-up, it was time for the entertainment. The family performed an impressive traditional dance. After that, it was time for me to execute the thing. I was led to a dim backstage area where a piano awaited me.
Now, for our next performance, we have the genius pianist, Samuel Miller, a dear friend of the groom, John.
After the grand introduction, the spotlight fell on me. The piece was Liszt's Liebestraum. I had always thought of playing it at someone's wedding, but never imagined it would be at my dear friend John's. The tension was different from concerts, jazz bars, or street performances. It felt like the first piece ended in a blink. After a brief pause, I placed my hands on the keys again. Simultaneously, John stood up. It was a plan only the planner, John, and I knew about. As everyone watched in surprise, John prepared a violin hidden under the table. We synchronized with eye contact and began the second piece, Elgar's Salutdammer. While playing, memories of my travels flashed through my mind. England, Germany, France, Spain, Austria, the list was endless. The unexpected encounters, the strangers. A man suddenly appeared. A girl I didn't recognize. Even though I had played duets with many, playing with John today was something else. Our performance was perfect, complementing each other's dynamics. The sounds matched perfectly, each enhancing the other's nuances. From the violin, a strong sense of enjoyment in the performance was palpable. Playing, I felt a warmth in my eyes. The audience, including the bride, was moved to tears. What a perfect performance! A 15-year-old promise fulfilled. A duet between pianist Samuel Miller and violinist John Wilson. As the last note and its echo faded, applause filled the hall. Eventually, it quieted down, and John took the microphone.
Samuel and I have been best friends since elementary school. Both of us played instruments, but I wasn't good enough to match genius pianist Samuel Miller. I had been asked for a duet, but I always put it off, thinking I wasn't his equal.
Back then, John didn't enjoy playing the violin, while I always loved the piano. He must have felt the gap.
I'm so happy we could finally have our duet today.
The hall erupted in applause again.
I was supposed to end it here, but let me introduce him, Samuel Miller.
Carried away by the momentum, John started talking about something unplanned.
He's not only my best friend, but a genius pianist. As I mentioned, he's a big deal on YouTube, with over 1 million subscribers. Everyone, please check out his YouTube channel.
As John mentioned, my YouTube channel, thankfully, has a lot of viewers. I upload videos of single performances and my performances abroad. To add, lately, I've also been composing, receiving numerous requests. Some of them have become worldwide hits. Though it's a bit vulgar to discuss, the account I created at John's bank holds about $80 million. Despite this, I don't live lavishly. I lead a comfortable life. I plan to keep traveling to various countries.
Let's give him a big round of applause.
At John's prompting, the whole room turned to applaud and look at me. I didn't jump for joy. Instead, I simply, gracefully, bowed as a pianist would. Since around the summer of my 8th grade, I started receiving anonymous letters in my locker and desk. They were simple messages warning me to be careful, as some bad boys were targeting me, telling me to watch out for extortion or worse. These were written in distinctive upward slanting script, like a tip-off from someone. It was around that time Emily Brown started coming to the music room. One thing always puzzled me. Though she bullied me daily, she never interrupted my playing. She would always wait until I finished a piece and the audience and I were done savoring the moment. It seems she listened to my performance and then hurried me home. So, it's conceivable she was the author of these letters. Thinking back, the handwriting was identical to that on the wedding invitation. I tried contacting Emily several times to confirm, but she adamantly denied it. Perhaps it's best not to push too hard. So, I kept this realization to myself, secretly grateful. The wedding ended, and as guests started leaving, and parents were busy with goodbyes, some kids came over to me.
Your piano playing was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Can you play that song?
Turns out, they wanted the theme song from a certain demon-slaying anime. I played just the chorus, and they were thrilled. One request led to another. From a pretending family anime to a cursed objects anime, causing quite the commotion. Eventually, the commotion settled down, and the bride and groom came over to me.
Samuel, thanks so much for today.
Thank you, too.
About that account cancellation you mentioned.
John started, and Emily, now Emily Wilson, looked at me apologetically. No, I was just emotional. Wouldn't really do that.
That's good to hear.
John replied, relieved. About that money.
Yeah.
I want to use that $80 million to set up a music school, not for training, but to provide opportunities in music. I want to support anyone who doesn't want to give up on music for financial reasons. As I shared my dream, they agreed to help. They seemed to resonate with my thoughts on music and offered to assist with the establishment and operation. A few days after the wedding, John contacted me.
Thanks for the other day. We found out today Emily's pregnant. Maybe that's why she was so emotional then. Please, forgive her.
While preparing for my next trip, I replied, Congratulations. It's profound to think my best friend is becoming a dad. Don't worry about that incident, all's good. And hey, check out my latest video upload. That night, a video titled For My Dear Friends was uploaded on my channel. It was a medley of Liebestraum and Salutdammer from the wedding, a memento to keep the magic of that moment alive. I thought about uploading our duet, but that legendary performance with John remains a treasured memory. People's true nature isn't defined by educational qualifications or superficial words. I may be a high school dropout, but I consider myself successful in my own right. And so is Emily Brown. Her behavior towards me in middle school might seem unforgivable, but she was actually trying to protect me in her awkward way, like with those anonymous letters. My appreciation for life's nuances came from interacting with people worldwide. Not every country excels in education, but that doesn't mean their people are unkind. The essence lies much deeper in what we believe and think. That's what really matters. I aim to express my essence through piano performances, hoping someday it might be someone's salvation.